Welcome back, my friends. Once again, we're here with Pastor Bruce Dowell, and we're starting the celebration of Hanukkah. It's right here now, and we need to take a look at it from our perspective as Jew and Gentile. We're going into it as a one new man situation. We need to realize that, yes, this was very important to the Jewish believers, but it's also important to us. Why is it important? Because for one thing, Yeshua honored it. He made his presence there, and he became part of it. As they lit the menorahs, he said, I am the light of the world. And that's something that we need to take to heart. He used their celebration, honored it, and brought it back so we can see him in it. Now, Pastor, as we're going into this now, what do you think we need to be aware of, and where do we go in with tradition, and where do we go with honoring the Lord in this? And how do we differentiate?
Okay. First, we have to ask ourselves, what would Yeshua do?
Exactly.
And Yeshua, it can be argued that Yeshua certainly didn't denounce Hanukkah.
True.
Even though it's not one of the Leviticus 23 Moedim, or holidays, it is a very important holiday, symbolizing and recognizing Israel's freedom. And it goes deeper than that. It actually gives a serious warning about the coming anti-Messiah.
Yes, it does.
The Antichrist. So in that aspect, Hanukkah is certainly to be embraced, I believe, by all believers. In John 10:22, we read, I'm reading from the Complete Jewish Bible, it says, Then came Hanukkah in Jerusalem, in Yerushalayim. Now, the other translations say, then came the Feast of Dedication, or the time of the festival, but it's speaking of Hanukkah.
Correct.
So then came Hanukkah in Jerusalem. It was winter, and Yeshua was walking around inside the temple area in Shlomo's colonnade. So the Judeans surrounded him and said to him, How much longer are you going to keep us in suspense? If you are the Messiah, tell us publicly. And then the conversation goes on. He said, I've already told you, and you don't trust me, and so on and so forth. But the point is, Yeshua knows that if he goes up into the temple area on this holiday, at the very least, he's placing his stamp of approval on it.
Right.
He's endorsing it.
He's endorsing it, yes.
When you don't endorse something, you stay completely away from it.
Correct.
So it's very important that we understand that. And Yeshua is in fact up there with the people on this holiday. And he's asked this question about, are you the Messiah? Tell us publicly.
Right.
And Hanukkah speaks of several things. One of it is it deals with the light of the menorah, and of course Yeshua is the light of the world.
Exactly.
Okay, so the tradition in the Maccabean tradition goes on and tells us that when the Maccabeans took control and defeated the Greeks,
right,
they wanted to rededicate the temple.
Exactly.
And so they pulled out the menorah, and they had just enough oil to fill the lamps on the menorah, and that would burn for one day.
Right.
They had enough oil for one day.
Now, just a little background on that is the reason they only had one day's worth of oil, and they were fortunate to even find that, is because when the Greeks took over, they desecrated the temple.
Yeah.
They destroyed all the artifacts in there, including the scrolls. They tried to get rid of everything. They sacrificed a pig in there, and they really tried to do everything to counterfeit the meaning of the temple. So when the Maccabees took over, they were trying to restore everything. They cleaned everything up, were getting everything ready. They searched high and low, and the only thing they could find was a container that the Greeks had overlooked with enough oil for one day. And that's
Right.
kind of where we're at.
Yeah, so they had there was a dilemma before them.
Yes.
Do they make new oil enough to sustain the menorah to go for a long time?
Right.
Or do they burn what they have, get on with the dedication immediately, and put the oil they have, and then start working on the oil, and presumably the light is going to go out because it's going to run out of oil. They're going to have a downtime there before they can relight it.
Yes.
They choose, and this is what's so interesting, because Hanukkah is it's called the Feast of Dedication.
Correct.
And it's a time for us to recommit our lives. And like the Maccabeans, they didn't choose to wait for the conditions to be right before they rededicated. They chose to
Exactly.
rededicate right now and then take it as it comes. So they did just that. They put the oil they had into the menorah, they lit it, and the story goes on to tell us that the 1 day's worth of oil was multiplied out and burned for 8 days, which was the time that was required to make the new oil.
Exactly.
And so there was never any downtime here with the rededication or the light of the world or all of these different things.
That really shows a good lesson for us too.
Oh, yeah.
If we go in and start rededicating our lives right now, instead of waiting until, well, I'm not just ready yet, is God going to carry us through? Obviously He will.
He will carry us through, and it may not be quite the miraculous thing that the Maccabeans saw,
Right.
and it could be a little bit of a bumpy road, but He will take us through.
He will take us through.
Remember when the man came to Yeshua and said, "I want to follow you, but I've got to wait for my father to die so I can bury him, and then I'll be back."
Exactly.
As you read the scriptures, you realize we never hear from this guy again.
True.
Did he become a disciple at some point down the road? We don't know, but he didn't want to put this dedicating himself to the Lord at the forefront. He had other priorities.
Exactly.
And so we have to really be careful of that. So I think that to take a page out of the Maccabean playbook, let's rededicate ourselves right now, immediately.
Exactly. Right.
Don't wait for circumstances to look better or positive or be right. Just do it and see what God will do in your life.
Yes. That's what we need. Is we need His touch and His support in going through this.
Exactly. The Hanukkah, as we've said, is a time for dedication. It's also, in my estimation, it probably is the season when Yeshua was actually conceived in his mother's womb.
Right.
And I realize that not everybody agrees with that, but that's what I see. And then that would put his birth 9 months later, right around the beginning of Sukkot.
Right. Which really makes sense when you...
Yeah, which I personally believe he was born at Sukkot.
Likewise.
I believe the first day of Sukkot, and then he was circumcised on the 8th day, which is Shemini Atzeret.
Right. Which is why
So
the Lord set aside that special day.
Yeah. So I think that obviously there were some real miracles happening
Correct.
on this holiday.
Correct.
So I think it's a day not just for rededication or dedication, it's a day for miracles. And I think we should be approaching this season as we go into the season, which it's coming up very quickly. As we go into the season, we should approach it with an expectancy of miracles in our lives.
Wow, that's pretty awesome when you really start to think about it. But that's what God says. He says, you
Yeah.
should expect from me.
Exactly.
The more we rely on Him and the less we rely on natural circumstances, the better off we are.
Right, right. So it also reminds us that Yeshua was the light of the world, but we also are the light of the world. Yeshua is with his Father right now, standing at the right hand of power, as we know from the Bible. But who is the light on planet Earth? Well, it's us, the believers.
True.
So we need to allow our lights to shine during this season.
Exactly.
Not to be embarrassed or ashamed. Obviously, the big holiday in this season is Christmas. It dwarfs Hanukkah.
Yes, it does.
Completely. And as believers, when we tell people, well, we celebrate Hanukkah, not so much Christmas, we need not to be ashamed of that.
Correct.
But we need to be bold in our proclamation as to why. To not in a condemning manner to people who are celebrating Christmas, but in a way of defending our faith. Like the word says, be ready in and out of season to defend your faith.
Correct.
So this is part of our faith, Hanukkah.
Yes, it is.
And so we need to be able to defend that with our loved ones and with our friends, and hopefully share with them why we're doing it. Why did we quit Christmas, as it were, and embrace Hanukkah after all these years?
Exactly.
I mean, that's a valid question that people are asking us, and we need to have an answer for that.
Right.
Because people scratch their head and they look at you and think, you're jumping ship, what are you doing? And the response needs to be based, and it needs to have semblance of order to it and functionality.
Correct.
But our argument is Christmas is not even in the Bible, whereas Hanukkah is.
That's true.
Yeshua, although Christmas was a huge Roman holiday, he didn't participate in it.
Correct.
Neither did his disciples. They participated in Hanukkah, which they tend to overlap each other typically.
Right.
Or very close.
Correct.
Both of them fall obviously in the month of December at some point in time.
Yes.
So there's often overlapping, and we need to really share with people that are honestly seeking deeper truth. So for all of our viewers, we need to encourage each and every one to really study to show yourself approved.
Right. 2 Timothy 2:15.
Exactly. Why are you doing this?
Yes.
Is it important to do it? Or does it matter? Does it even matter if you do Christmas or Hanukkah? We need to be able to answer. First and foremost, we need to have the conviction within ourselves. Secondly, we need to be able to give an answer.
Correct. We do. Yeah, and I think one of the big things was when you go back in history and look at the fact, why was this a big Roman holiday? It was because they were celebrating all the pagan gods.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of it.
And it was the birth of those gods.
It was the birth of those gods. Now they combined the birth of Yeshua in there just to make everybody come together, not because it was the right thing to do.
And believers went along with it and even endorsed it because it took the heat off of them.
Exactly.
They could celebrate the birth of their God on the day when that celebration was acceptable to the society. They blended into a degree. They didn't stand out like a sore thumb. They weren't risking their life in standing for their conviction.
Right.
They did it covertly. And the problem with that is over the last 2,000 years since then, it has become arguably the second most important holiday in Christendom.
That's true.
Easter being the first and Christmas being the second.
Well, it's even gotten to the point where it's now a secular holiday.
The whole world celebrates
The
Christmas.
whole world celebrates it.
It doesn't even matter what your faith is. And even in America, we're getting the faith out of Christmas, which for many years I was deeply opposed to, of course.
Right.
But now, I mean, I see it more as just a secular holiday.
Yes.
So if you want to take the religiousness out of it, fine, I guess, but we need to understand it's no longer a Christian holiday.
Correct. That's true.
And even believers, I mean, think about it. On Christmas morning, you get up and you got all these gifts, and you got all your kids chomping at the bit to jump into them and start opening.
Right.
Typically you start with a little prayer, and you dedicate the day to the Lord, and you try to get through the nativity story.
Yeah. Try to.
While everyone's chomping at the bit, and then you say the Amen.
And that's it.
And that's it. Everybody does their presents. You wolf down some breakfast. You get dressed because now you got to head to Grandma's house. And you spend the rest of the day with loved ones and really in a party atmosphere.
Correct.
And so Jesus, or Yeshua, he got honorable mention at the beginning.
Correct.
And that's a very typical scenario. I mean, it may be overstating for some believers, but that's probably the norm.
Yeah, it is.
And I've been pastoring for over 40 years, and I can tell you with the people that I've run into, that is the norm.
Yes.
That's how it goes. And people, they do their best to make sure that the Lord is involved in it, but he really isn't involved in it.
True.
And so therein lies a problem.
Yes.
Whereas Hanukkah is all about a biblical holiday. It's all about a biblical miracle.
Exactly.
So, what else do you do with it? You're not going to give a history lesson so much. You're going to talk about the idea of this is a season of miracles.
Right. Miracles and rededication.
Yeah, and of course, even Christmas is presented as a season of miracle.
True.
And I think that's a carryover from the Hanukkah story, really.
Yeah.
So...
Although they're saying the miracle of the birth.
Yeah. But nevertheless, an underlying theme is it's a season of miracles.
Correct.
So I think that we need to really get back to the basics and really keep it a little more biblically orientated and present the idea of rededication, that we are the light of the world. We have oil for today, so let your light burn today.
Correct.
Yeshua himself said, don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow has enough problems of its own.
Yes, it does.
Just burn brightly today.
Right.
And he'll take care of the rest. And that really is the message of Hanukkah for us.
Exactly. And it also is known as the Festival of Lights.
Yes.
Because of the lighting of the Hanukkah.
Exactly.
Hanukkah.
Yeah, exactly.
As long as we keep that in mind. Now, that's not to say for those of you who are celebrating Christmas, God will show up.
Oh, yes.
Whenever you really honor God, he'll show up. But that happens on any day.
Yeah.
So when we honor him, be thankful that you are honoring him and accept his presence there and welcome it. But realize, too, that that's not really the day of the Savior's birth.
Yeah. And we do what we do in the Messianic One New Man movement because we're trying to do everything in a more biblically excellent manner.
Exactly.
So that means we have to read the Word as it's written, not read it through the lens of our forefathers' traditions.
Correct.
But we need to read it for ourselves, let it speak to us, let the Holy Spirit speak to us, and then begin to embrace the truth that God shows us about it.
Yes.
So I think that's of huge importance. that we do that in order to more closely follow the leading of the Bible and the teaching of the Bible.
Correct.
We claim in our Christian faith, those that believe in Messiah Yeshua, we believe that the Word is the inspired Word of God, that it's complete truth, that it's the guideline for living of our lives, it's the blueprint for living life in a godly manner.
Right.
And therefore, we need to do it. And of course, in Yeshua, He Himself came to earth. John 1:29, I think it is, says He came to earth and He exegeted the Father. In other words, exegete means to copy, and it literally means to explain.
Yes.
So, in the Lord's life of 33 years, which really we only know very little, and really about the last 3 years.
Correct.
But we look at His life through the Gospels, the lens of the Gospels, and we see how He explained living out the Bible. And in this case, He didn't include Christmas in it at all. He did Hanukkah.
Correct.
And He explained Hanukkah to us. So why did He do that? Because I believe it's His desire that we would keep Hanukkah.
Exactly. Yeah. If we don't follow His example and enter into it as He shows us, then we're not really following our rabbi. We're
That's
not
right.
really doing as He is showing us to do.
That's exactly right.
So we need to be faithful to follow in His footsteps. The more we do, the closer we're going to be to the Father.
Correct.
And that's what He came to earth for, is to welcome us back to the Father.
Yeah, that's exactly why He came, to reconcile us to the Father.
Exactly.
So if the Father worked a miracle in the Hanukkah season, we should take note of that.
Precisely.
Because it was a big miracle, and it was a miracle that had very profound impact on our daily life.
Exactly.
You know, much like we talk about the parting of the Red Sea with Moshe, that was a miracle. And we celebrate, in Christendom we don't have any official celebration for that.
Right.
But we always talk about the idea of the Red Sea as you're leaving Egypt, you're leaving bondage, and you're going through this sea to freedom.
Correct.
To the promised land. So we make these spiritual analogies, which are fine.
Right.
But this is one more of those seasons, those events that the Father has worked.
Exactly.
That apply not just to the generation that went through it, but to all subsequent generations after them.
Correct.
So I think it's clearly biblically very important and biblically mandated for believers to celebrate Hanukkah, to spread the good news about Hanukkah,
Yes.
and to teach others to do the same.
Correct. And if you want a little bit more details on why we think He was conceived, you need to go back and again, do some studying on your own.
Mm-hmm.
When the priests were allowed to enter into the temple and what they were allowed to do, and through that you can get a timeline.
Yeah.
Now the only thing we don't know is there is probably a 6-month variance, one way or the other. But if you line it up with what's happening, what God has set aside as His festivals, it makes perfect sense that Hanukkah would be the time of conception, leading us into the birth, which was at Sukkot.
Yeah.
And that would be the 8 days, because the traditional birth of a child is an 8-day period. The day of the birth, then the 7 days of growth, and on the 8th day they're circumcised,
Yeah.
and that is when they're really said to be alive and
Right.
human.
Yeah.
So it just fits in.
It does. There's two main schools of thought, of course, in the
There
Messianic
is.
movement on the birth of Messiah. One being the one that we've talked about. He was born at Sukkot, conceived at Hanukkah. The other school of thought is he was born at Passover, and it is a strong argument there as well.
Right.
I just feel that there's a little more evidence leaning in towards the Sukkot side of things.
Right. In my
But-
studies, that's what I found also.
Yeah, so of course it's like so many things in the Bible. There's a couple schools of thought on everything in the Bible,
Well, that's true.
and we're not really given enough concrete detail to prove it.
Correct.
So the Lord knows how to keep us walking by faith.
Yeah. And that's what we need to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to enter in and just trust in Him. But the bottom line in all this, whichever you celebrate, dedicate it to the Lord fully. Let Him know that you know that He's the reason.
Right.
And Hanukkah is special. We need to realize it's special. Mm-hmm. It's a festival of lights. It's when Yeshua declared that He is the light of the world. Through that, He is giving us the torch to carry through our lives. And we need to stand up and say, yes, we accept it.
Right.
We want to be the light
Amen.
that you have
Amen.
given us to be, and walk it out.
Amen.
If we sit back and let the world take over, which a lot of Christians are doing,
Yeah.
what's going to happen?
That won't be good.
No, it won't. So we really need to step up.
Yeah.
And my friends, that's all the time we have for today. So please join us again next time. And if you want to get in touch with us, contact us at www.shilomessianic.com. If you want to get Pastor Bruce's books, go to www.pastorbrucedowell.com. We know that you'll find both of his books very interesting. Waiting on the Father's Gift and
Healing for low self-esteem.
Healing for Low Self-Esteem. We just went through a class on healing your soul, and this book of Healing Your Low Self-Esteem fits in with that very strongly. So take a look at them. And if you would like to see us, watch the video, go to www.shilomessianic.com and check out our YouTube site. And until next time, Shalom.
Shalom.